And then by 2020, I then did my OSCP cert, cleared the exam, and I also did my CH. And CH, I did it because I got it for free. It was a scholarship that I got from EC Council to do the practical version of CH. So I just started to do that, and then by 2021, I joined 54 Gene, um, a biotech company in Nigeria, as a security engineer, doing offensive security for them, also doing application security as well as cloud security. Then from there, I transitioned to Modus Create as a senior DevSecOps engineer, just working with clients to build secure CI/CD pipelines, as well as conduct in-depth security assessments to identify security vulnerabilities in their code, as well as, their infrastructure and their applications. So that's where I currently am right now. Now, let's dive right into what penetration testing is for people who don't know what it is, because that's why we are here today. So penetration testing really is about identifying, exploiting, and reporting security vulnerabilities in a way that is responsible, right? So you're not just finding vulnerabilities for the sake of finding those vulnerabilities. You're identifying the security vulnerabilities in applications or in infrastructure, or um, or in a security process for the sake of reporting it responsibly or disclosing it to the organization that has been affected. And that's what penetration testers really do, or ethical hackers. And like you can see in the slide, the goal is to report all exploitable vulnerabilities under controlled circumstances. So because availability and integrity, as well as confidentiality, are all aspects of cybersecurity, you should not now in the process of, you know, wanting to exploit security vulnerabilities, breach any of those, foundational security pillars. So let me give you an example. If you're in the middle of a penetration test, or if you're trying to ethically hack an application or a website, after getting consent from the owners of those websites or the owners of those applications, you've done the whole NDA, you've signed an agreement, and you've also signed the rule of engagement that specifies what is permitted and what is not permitted in the course of doing security assessments. If in the process of that, you identify a security issue that can bring down the application, that is, it can lead to a denial of service situation for a core application, let's say like a bank website, for a GT website, you're doing an assessment on GT's websites, and you identify a vulnerability that when you exploit will result in that application not being available to users. You should not exploit that vulnerability, rather report it or test it within a controlled environment so that you do not breach the availability of the application. Because in the process of trying to protect, you've actually done more harm than good. So that's why, a penetration test is done under controlled circumstances. And really, penetration testing is 10% of tools and 90% of manual testing. I can tell you for a fact that many of the security vulnerabilities that I've discovered and exploited were not found by automation, but were found by manually reviewing the application, just walking through the application like a regular user would walk through the application, and trying to inject, payloads or exploits within different parameters within the application manually. Automated tools can only find so much, but manual efforts is a lot of the things that you do during a penetration test, and that's what makes the difference between a vulnerability assessment and a penetration test, because a penetration test finds and exploits vulnerabilities. That means you don't only identify, but you also try to exploit. While a vulnerability assessment, you only try to identify security vulnerabilities and report them. You don't attempt to exploit or validate the existence of that vulnerability or that security weakness. Is everybody following? Okay, I want
Okay.
to believe
Yes, we are
everybody's following.
following. Yeah.
Okay, so these are some example tools that we use for different purposes in the field of pen testing. I would say that these are like even the most popular ones. The first one on my on the left to the left of the screen is Metasploit. Metasploit is an all-round penetration testing framework that has different modules for conducting different types of penetration tests. So if you're focusing on application, if you're focusing on infrastructure, and when I say infrastructure, I'm talking about Active Directory, on-premise network, even cloud also can also be infrastructure. It has different modules or different features that can be used to identify and exploit security vulnerabilities across different platforms, so applications and infrastructure. While Warp Suits, which is the second logo that is on my screen, is focused majorly on web applications or applications, not maybe not 100% web applications, but if you're doing API security penetration test or API security assessment, if you're doing a web application security testing, you use Bullshit a lot, and it has two versions. There's a community version, and then there's a professional version. The community version is free for everybody, while the professional version is a paid tool and it costs about $400 or thereabout per annum. And then you have Nmap, which is arguably the most popular um, penetration testing tool or security tool out there. And what Nmap basically does is it has the ability to, scan ports and services. So it's able to determine what ports are open on an application. So let me just give a very classic example. If you're doing a penetration test for a website, and you want to identify what ports and services are open, you use a tool like Nmap to scan the domain. And by scanning that domain, you are able to identify, is port 80 for HTTP open, is port 3306 open, that's for database, or is there any other interesting port that might be open. So ports are like, I don't know how to put it. Ports are like windows, right? They're like different entry points into an application, and they have services running on each of those ports. So every port has a service. So a service is maybe a web service, a web application service. That's why when you open your browser and you put HTTP da 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 da, or puts a URL at the end of that, it's a HTTP service or a web service that is running on that server, and that's why you're able to access, a web page basically. Or if it's a database service, all of those services run on different ports, and each of those services are potential entry points to that server because those ports have been exposed, and those ports provide an avenue for a pen tester or even a malicious user to get access to that server. So just picture ports as windows for servers. And Nmap is what you use to discover those open ports and services. And Nmap actually does even much more than that. It can also run vulnerability scans to identify security issues on the exposed services. And then finally, to my right is OWASP Zap. So it's a tool by OWASP. So OWASP is a foundation, like a foundation that has been set up for application security. Basically, they provide guidelines, they provide directions on how to secure applications from web to mobile to APIs, different types of applications. They provide guidelines, they provide tools for identifying security issues on those platforms. And the classic example is the OWASP ZAP. So ZAP means Z Attack Proxy. And what it just does is basically it proxies the traffic between a user and a website through the platform. And while that traffic is being proxied, vulnerability scans are occurring. So basically, you can use it to identify any vulnerability that may exist on a web application or even on a mobile application or even on APIs. So yeah, those are the most popular or most common tools. Like I said, pen testing is 10% of the tools. The tools just help you, but you are the one who should be knowledgeable in the use of these tools. So imagine giving a Lamborghini to a baby. A baby doesn't know how to drive, but he has a very fast car. So it means, but there's a very good chance that somebody who is using a Toyota Camry would outrun that Lamborghini because the person is a more mature driver and is more knowledgeable about how to drive than a baby who has been given a Lamborghini who doesn't know how to drive at all. So it's 10% tools and 90% manual. You understand? So let's go to the next slide. And like I'm going to emphasize again, a good house is built on solid foundation. If you're here and you want to get into penetration testing and you have zero knowledge about networking, your programming skills are not so strong, or you have zero knowledge about programming or even basic encryption, then you need to go back to the basics. Most importantly is computer networking and encryption, right? But say for programming, you don't need to be an expert, but you need to be familiar with, some level of programming like Python and Bash. So those two programming languages are very good for you as a penetration tester. If you're somebody who isn't familiar with any of those, these will give you an edge. You understand, especially in the field of pen testing, because a lot of the exploits you're going to be using, a number of the tools they're going to be using are written in these programming languages. And if you don't have the ability to even read or understand, what the content of an exploit is doing, then it might be difficult for you to use it to exploit an application. So that's why, you need programming to some extent, and you'd also need programming if you want to automate some processes, because a very simple example is if you're testing 1,000 web applications and you need to run Nmap scans across each of those web applications, and then maybe save the output of that somewhere. You don't want to run Nmap over and over and over again. You can simply automate that repetitive process of running Nmap multiple times, you understand, by leveraging on tools like Python or Bash to make your life a lot easier. So the whole essence is the foundations of a pen tester are networking, programming, encryption. Three very key area or three very key areas. So make sure you don't rush, take your time to learn, and you're also free to ask questions if you need clarifications on anything. So still emphasizing on the basics, you want to break things down into knowledge, skills, and abilities. So take your time to learn the basics, learn networking, learn Linux, learn Windows command line interface, learn PowerShell, learn how web applications work, because if you're going to exploit a web application, you need to understand how a web application is even built in the first place. You need to spend some time learning about, Active Directory, cloud technology now, because a lot of organizations have, moving to the cloud. So if you're going to perform an assessment in the cloud, you need to be at least familiar with cloud technologies, have a basic understanding of the different platforms, most popularly AWS, and have an understanding of databases, containers, that's cloud native technologies now, concepts like Kubernetes, containerization. In this day and age, developers have moved way ahead of the current day pen testers, because the current day pen testers are only focused on things that people used to use before, but we've gone beyond that now. So that's why you have to advance yourself in this technological evolution by learning about these different technologies, because it will help you when you're trying to access and exploit them. So yep, those are the basics. But like I mentioned earlier, most importantly, networking, Unix and Windows command line interface, and scripting, web applications, as well as encryption. So where can you, practice? Where can you perfect your skills? So there are different platforms that you can learn ethical hacking from. Most popularly, everybody knows Hack the Box, and now there's the Hack the Box Academy where you can go sign up, and then there are like videos and guides that you can use to learn pen testing and ethical hacking, and there are different pathways you can decide to follow, from beginner level to advanced, as well as, CCM Academy, also very popular. That's by the Cyber Mentor. He has an academy where you can learn from entry level also to advanced. He has a couple of free videos also on YouTube. Then there's Sports Figure Academy. So the same people that developed the Bob Suit tool have an academy for learning web application hacking, and it's very practical, it's very hands-on, and it's free. Then there's Try Hack Me, which is also free. Then there's a paid version of Try Hack Me. There are things where you call rooms, and when you sign up within different rooms, there are a set of things you're expected to do to complete a room. And in the process of completing those tasks, you're practicing, you don't just have theoretical knowledge now, but you're getting practical knowledge of what you're actually doing. Then there's Pentester Lab, which is one of the oldest platforms here. It has over 400 scenarios that you can use to learn pen testing and ethical hacking from beginner level to advanced level. Then there's Pentester Academy that have been taken over by INE. Then there's Vaughan Machines, Offensive Security Proving Grounds. That's by Offensive Security, the people behind the OSCP certification, as well as you can decide to have a home lab if you have a very good computer that has maybe I usually recommend a minimum of 8 gig of RAM, and your processor and your CPU is in good standing, and you have good storage. You can decide to set up a home lab. It's just your computer will get very full very quickly, and you can learn these same things in your home lab. Then in terms of your abilities, that's now applying your knowledge and skills to real world situations. And how do you do that? You can decide to, especially as a beginner, you can decide to go down the path of bug bounty hunting. And what bug bounty hunting is sorry, can you help me mute? Okay. So I was talking about bug bounty hunting. So bug bounty hunting is more or less a free for all penetration testing or ethical hacking activity that organizations use to help identify whatever security issues may exist in their applications. And for example, Google can have a bug bounty hunting program, and then they call on any and everybody. They give them a scope and say, oh yeah, just try to find any security vulnerabilities that exist in applications, and we'll pay you a huge amount of money. So if you have watched these very old school movies where they have like bounties for like somebody who is wanted, right? So just picture those bounties and rewards. So if they're looking for a criminal, there's like a maybe $100,000 reward. So that's what a bug bounty program, was modeled after. So the organizations come out and say, oh, if you can find a security vulnerability in our applications, we'll pay you a certain amount of money. And all you just need to do is to sign up on, platforms like HackerOne or BugCrowd, and then you just identify a scope for a public program, and then you start hacking away literally. But before you get to that point, you need to have sorted out your knowledge and your skills. You need to have spent time practicing, learning, and perfecting and sharpening your skills before you can get to that point of bug bounty hunting. And during penetration test also is when you can get to apply your skills to real world situation. And I will not lie to you, you might not get an opportunity to do this right off the bat, and it's because, especially in Nigeria, if you're here, you're based in Nigeria, there are not a lot of open um, positions for entry level ethical hackers, and I'll be truly sincere with you. Um, Very few organizations want to take a risk with giving or entrusting the testing of the applications to a newbie. They'll rather use somebody who is experienced and who has like a proven history of conducting penetration tests. But what you can do is to, keep building and um, keep building your penetration testing skills. And trust me, when an opportunity presents itself, definitely you can apply for that job opportunity. Just try to build some experience in the field of cybersecurity in general. And when an opportunity arises for a penetration tester, maybe within 1 year of practicing or doing ethical hacking, you should be able or comfortable enough to apply for those job roles or for those job positions where you get to do penetration tests for organizations. And also the reason why that field is structured in the way it is because organizations don't conduct pen tests like on a daily basis. It's not like an operational job. It is a job that would most likely involve you conducting a penetration test or a vulnerability assessment once a month. And it may even be driven by a compliance requirement. So if CBN mandates that all banks in Nigeria conduct a pen test on the applications once every month, it means they would need somebody who would conduct a penetration test once every month. But just picture what you'll be doing, like within those periods when you're not actively, being engaged. So most times these organizations will rather hire like third parties to conduct the pen test for them. Organizations like Essentry, organizations like Digital Jaws, these are organizations that have teams of pen testers, of ethical hackers that work with these different organizations to help them fulfill that compliance requirement of conducting a penetration test or ethical hacking assessment or once a month. So that's just a very simple example. Let me go to the next point. During adversary emulation also, you get to practice, apply your red teaming skills. And adversary emulation is just basically emulating what a threat actor would do when he compromises the environment. It is a more in-depth um, activity and goes above and beyond what a penetration test would give you. So adversary emulation can even cover physical security. That's an attempt to, bypass your physical security mechanisms, say like lock picking. The pen tester or the red teamer will try to pick locks, try to get into your server room, and all those types of interesting things. Probably might drop a USB that contains malware within your premises, expecting somebody to just insert that into their computer for them to get initial access. And it's a lot broader, right? So adversary emulation is a lot broader. It can also encompass, phishing, attempting to phish a staff or a member of your team to gain initial access to your environment and all of that. And then during incident response also, you can put your your pen testing, your offensive security skills to the test. Because if during an incident response situation, the blue teamers are trying to figure out what an attacker is trying to do, you with an attacker's mindset, you have a good understanding of the different stages of the different life cycles of an attack or of a pen test. So you basically know, oh, okay, this guy is trying to scan, or this guy is trying to exploit, or this guy is trying to exfiltrate data, and you can help the incident response team mitigate that security incidents based on your knowledge of offensive security. And finally, it is during hands-on certification exam. That's why I always recommend hands-on certification exams for people who really want to do pen testing, because it is one thing to know, it is one thing to be able to do. So if you gather the knowledge, you've put together the skills during these hands-on exams, a very classic example is the OSCP certification, which is a 24-hour long exam, and you're expected to compromise, a set of systems within that 24-hour period, right? And at the end of that 24 hours, you're expected to submit a penetration test report of how you compromise each of those assets in scope, and provide also like remediation action or how those things that you exploited can be remediated. So that's already give you a very good confidence boost if you're going to approach an actual real world pen test, right? And it builds your ability. And all of these certifications I've listed here are hands-on certification exam. There's the eLearn Junior Penetration Tester, which is very entry-level friendly. If you're just getting started, you you want to try out the eLearn Junior Penetration Tester certification. I think is maybe also 24 hours long, but it's simpler than the OSCP certification. Then there's also the Certified Penetration Tester by Hack the Box. So Hack the Box have a penetration testing certification, and I'm not sure how much it costs, but it's not so extensive, as well as the EJPT. I think the EJPT is between $150 to $200 thereabouts. So that's about 260K naira for the certification, or more now that dollar has gone high. And then you have the practical network penetration tester by TCM. That's the Cyber Mentor, a very hands-on certification exam. You have maybe about 7 days to compromise a set of systems, and you also be expected to submit a report. It will help to improve your network and infrastructure penetration testing skills. I think it also covers Active Directory hacking. Then there's the ECPPT by eLearn Security, also hands-on, 7 days to conduct the pen tests, and you'll be expected to submit a report afterwards. And then you have the ECPTX, which is infrastructure. You have the WAPT, which is web application pen tester, and that's also by eLearn Security, and it's focused on exploiting web applications. So if you want to build your web application pen testing skills, you want to try, that exam or certification exam, which is quite hands-on. And notice here there's an X, so WAPT, and then there's WAPTX. So WAPTX is the elder brother of WAPT, which means WAPT Extreme. So that's advanced level web application pen testing. And trust me, if you are able to, get your hands into one or two of these certification exams, you you'd be at least to some extent comfortable with seeing a penetration testing engagement through from beginning to end. You understand? And then you have the OSCP, which is very popular, Offensive Security Certified Professional. That's the entry level certification, pen testing certification by Offensive Security. And then you have CRTP, which is Certified Red Teaming Professional. That's focused on Active Directory hacking. And then you have the CRTE also, that's Certified Red Team Expert. Both of these are focused on Active Directory hacking. So does anybody have any question at this point? We have 3 minutes remaining. Okay, no question. All right, so in all of this, it's important for you to trust the process, learn the basics, build on the basics, and then try to identify opportunities to practice, your skills. So typically, this is your attack life cycle, right? This is the MITRE attack life cycle, and I would say that a lot of penetration testing engagement follow this flow, right? Or adversary emulation engagements: initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, exfiltration, command and control. Don't just, when you're given a scope, you just launch a Metasploit tool and then you just start, attempting different things. You need to follow, a process, do reconnaissance, gather information about your targets. When you have enough information about the targets, it makes it, a lot clearer how you're supposed to approach the pen tests. It helps a lot. And then you proceed to weaponize, find a way to exploit the application, and then whatever other objectives that are defined within the rules of engagements, you follow through with that. Then what are some typical hands-on certification roadmaps? So this is a roadmap, and I recommend you can follow this roadmap. So EJPT is foundational. Notice I've not put CH here because CH is only knowledge base. You can do CH today and you would have zero experience with actually conducting a pen test. And I don't really recommend CH because it is not very practical. And while it is marketable, when eventually you probably land a job as somebody who has CH, and then they ask you, okay, conduct a penetration test. you go cast, like in very simple terms. Like you just cast because you don't have that practical experience. Yeah, yeah.
Hello. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so
I'm
much.
listening.
You only have 2 minutes, and I want us to quickly. I want to show us something before we go.
Oh,
So please sign to out. Yeah, I want to share my screen.
okay.
I only have 2 minutes to do this. If anybody have any question, please send your question to the group. To the group chat. Would take questions from there. You understand? So, but I want us to do something. So go to codec. Go to this site, codec.council.org. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. But can you please drop the link also?
Yeah, I will drop the link. I'll go to codec.ecouncil.org.
I can't hear you again.
But to start out for the roadmap here, go to codec.ecouncil.org. When you get there, sign up for an account and search for ethical hacking bracket EHE, and you can start learning from there. Basically, ethical hacking, vulnerability testing, assessment, and all that. You have access to a lot of resources here. You can start that for as a beginner. You understand? The meeting went soon, and I don't want